All right, we want to welcome you to another episode of the Family Business Podcast with the Alessis, and I'm pretty excited here because we have a full table, and we're talking about things we cannot talk about on Sunday because nobody would believe what you're going to hear today if we said it on Sunday. And so listen, we just want to make sure you're being encouraged by our Family Business Podcast, and you heard Chris on the intro. And if it is encouraging to you, maybe it'll encourage others. So go ahead and get the word out there and subscribe, and let's have fun with this. But here at the Family Business, we talk about things about business and family, because let's face it, family's everybody's business. So today's episode is brought to you by Ricola. Just before we go on, Armando decides to stick a Ricola lozenge in his mouth.
But nobody knows it's right here.
On that side?
Right here.
Couldn't tell.
And I'll try not to do this while we're...
That is great.
That's going to be fun to edit.
There you go. Well, we have some senior gin guys around the table, and you can tell that Armando and I are definitely senior because we're more silver lined than the other guys, especially John here, who only has a little pepper.
It's in my beard. I got
It's
it
in the beard.
here. Where am
You
I?
got a
Look.
great beard, John.
Thank you.
Yeah. Usually John is behind the glass over there, but we have Ashley doing it. So if anything messes up on this audio, it's Ashley's fault. And AP is right behind her, AP for Alan Paul. And then behind the cameras today is who, Chris?
Our boy Caleb Perez.
Caleb
Holding down
is
the
with
fort.
us. All right, so we're going to have fun today because I want this episode to focus on, since it's family, I wanted to focus on the guys that work with our family. So there's some things here that we got to talk about. So myself, Armando, John, Chris, we're all around the table. The focus is going to be on how to work with the family when you're not family. So our family's in leadership. You guys are in leadership. You've been incredibly loyal and faithful to Mary and myself since we started the church, and ever since you came along with us, incredibly loyal to us. Couldn't ask for better people. Matter of fact, some of my friends who minister they're just so impressed that you guys are still here. I don't know what that says about me and my dysfunction, but
I was just talking to John about that.
How do we do this,
That
Armando?
we're still here.
On next week's episode, Armando and I.
Are behind the glass again.
there you go. And there's a compliment to be paid to all of us because we stay in this thing together. But you have had to also work with us as our kids have started to grow up and they mature and are on staff with us. And some of your kids are on staff with us, Armando, and your kids in the future, John, could be on staff with us as well. So it's definitely a senior gen and a next gen. So all three of us on this side are the senior gen, and Chris is the next gen. So let's just kind of put it out there, all right? How do you manage? What are you saying behind our back? And what are you saying in the back room? How are you processing, making way for this next generation who happens to be the, boss's kids, and you're making way for them? Let's just jump right into this. So take it away, Senior
Me?
Armando.
Well, we're not blood family, but I would say that it's family to us. Your kids are our kids to us, which is interesting as well. It's an interesting dynamic in that sense, because here we are with the love that maybe a father would have for children, and we're more connected with some than others. Like Pastor Chris was in the youth group, and we had a really beautiful and still have a beautiful relationship. And, with the girls it's a little different, but they still feel like our kids. So as they come up and they grow up, all in their 20s, I think if anything in the back room, it's when needed, we talk about grace. because first of all, we were all in our 20s. I was in my 20s outside of church, so it's
Yeah.
even a different processing for that. But I think that if anything, it would be that they're not laden with mistakes or issues, or you have incredible kids. But with the management things and the church things and things that go into the family business and the church, first they're family. We treat it just like we treat, at least I speak for me, I think I speak for John, just like the relationship we treat with you and Pastor Mary. It's not going anywhere. It's not changing. We love each other. So that's like the bedrock.
Yep.
And then from there, we take it one step at a time, learning curves, just like you would with anyone else. So I think that that's what it is. Grace when needed, but mostly you're just loving to see the transition and the growth, like you would with your own kids.
Yeah.
Now, Armando, you've been here a little longer than I have. You've been here from the beginning. So you've seen them since they were even younger.
Jeez.
But for me, I've been here since 2001. So at the time, Chris, you were probably
8 or 9.
8 years old. Gabby was on Pastor Mary's hip. So we truly have seen them
Yeah.
grow up.
Gosh.
And I think part of what has helped us is Pastor Steve and Mary have always given us the open door into their world.
Right.
So you treated us like family. So we treated reciprocally
Yep.
you like family.
That's good.
And your kids, we have stories on each of them. Chris was a goldfish thief when he was in children's ministry.
Still is a goldfish thief. I don't mind admitting
Yeah.
that.
But we've seen the growth over the years, step by step.
Yeah.
And having a relationship with you has allowed us to have a relationship with them. That's
Yeah.
first. We know we are in their lives because you've allowed us into yours.
Yeah.
That's first. Second is you have never protected them from us.
Mm.
We've always had an open door. If we saw something, you'd always tell us. Make sure you call it out because you're not always there.
Yep.
And it's not in a bad way, but if we saw something, hey, Chris,
Right.
this, that, Steph. So that's the second thing. You've always given us that open door. And the third thing I feel is on our end, we've always had to put out the fire in our mind that we know that one day they will be our boss and be okay with that.
Mm.
And I remind myself, it's okay that I am going to work for someone who I saw in diapers,
Wow.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
Why? Because if we want something generational, if we want to be a part of something bigger than us,
Yeah.
then I want to see them succeed so that they can pour into my kids what you've poured into me.
Yeah.
Can I go into that word boss? Because I think that that's an important, we all know what that means and it's cute, but there could be ministries that have, or businesses that have a real boss
Yeah.
like feel.
Yep.
We don't feel that here. We know you're the boss, quote unquote. I don't think that's ever crossed my mind in that sense. We'd have to actually say it like we are now to actually see that. So we've all been able to put on a lot of different hats
Mhm.
over the years, and we can be personal.
Yep.
We can be coworkers. We can be mentor, mentee. He can be like, hey, Armando, I want to talk to you about something.
Mhm.
And I think that the most interesting thing about Metro Life Church, because I've not grown up in another one, this is my church, is we're all really good at putting on different hats, depending on what environment we're in. So that has been really special as well. And you've set that culture. You haven't set a boss culture. You have expectations and you want things done, but you haven't set that boss culture. And that's made it a lot easier, I think.
You know, Chris, you're sitting around the table and you represent not only Steph, Lauren, and Gabby, but you represent Marcus, Alan Paul's son, Marcus Paul, who is precious, man. Having him around, he went to school, and while he was in school, he worked part-time for us, and now he's pretty much full-time and helping out with Gianni in the finance office. So that next gen is right there. You know, we're the senior gen, you guys are the next gen. I mean, listen to what these guys are saying. How does that make you feel, first off?
Well, it was
Besides the fact that your dad's a great boss.
well, it was really awesome to hear John say that you never protected us from them. Because I'm literally sitting here thinking, I know what I'm going to say when it's my turn, that you never protected us from them.
Yeah.
And when you really break that down just psychologically, if the people who, the parents, the bosses, have poured into the most, if the parents put a dividing line between their kids and those people, you've actually just watered down all of your teaching. Because you've said the people that have been the most important and I've watered down, like I've poured into the most, still aren't good enough to speak to you
Right.
like a person.
Yeah.
So it actually starts to break down the very foundations of everything you teach. So, I mean, if they're supposed to be I guess you could say the best representation of your business, well, then if you draw a line in the sand between family and business, well, now the whole family draws that line in the sand too,
Yep.
and everything starts to crack. So I remember being 20 years old, laid out before these men and a couple others at my worst. I remember there was never a moment in my mind, because of the way we did things, where if I was called on the carpet by one of our senior staff, doesn't matter how it was said or what it was said, I never felt like I could go home and get them in trouble for that.
Yeah.
Because, and you've raised us this way, if there was a fire, which one of you did it?
Mm.
So if I did have to get told off by John, or if I did need to be put in my place by somebody, it was always okay, well, what in the heck did you do to get that? And maybe, I don't even know, maybe in y'all's back room, you guys handled that separately, but I never saw that.
Mhm.
All I knew was to not do that again.
Yeah.
And now I look at, and I know I'm next, but there's a lot of guys 7, 8 years younger than me coming on staff right now. And I feel like because I started so late, it's crazy to hear you say you work for Papa for 13, because September makes 10 years for me.
Yep.
So I feel like even I am coming into it like, wow, I can't protect these guys from Pastor Armando and from Jonathan and from
Yeah.
Des and Maury. I can't protect them either.
Yep.
You've got to be at their full mercy, because it's what made me who I am.
Yeah. Chris, do you realize at your 13th year, you're going to be 33? That's that year of crucifixion. So be careful.
No pressure.
We have, and just on our end, because there's back rooms in our family too, when something happens between a senior staff and our next generation staff and the family, they'll come home. Wow, I had to get talked to today, and I didn't appreciate the way they talked to me, or they were a little hard to me, they were a little rude to me, or there was those conversations going on in our living rooms, in our back rooms, about staff members who would have to correct them. And so whenever our kids would come home at that point, now, I've heard of some parents who really think their kids are perfect, and they hold their kids up there like their
Right.
kids are perfect. So if a teacher had to talk to them, it was bad teacher. I'm going to go talk to that principal because that teacher's not going to talk to them. If it's in business and a senior staff talk to their kids in a certain way, they would then go and reprimand that senior staff for talking to their kids that way.
Right.
That was never going to be the case in our home, because for one, actions speak a whole lot louder than words. And the actions of you guys and the other senior staff, Desiree, Maury, your wife Jackie, even Anna over the years, the senior staff, Alan Paul over the years, has always been honor, loyalty, love, good character. So if our kid ever came home because one of you had to correct him, they'll tell you, we didn't go to their defense. We had to say, all right, man, listen, we know so-and-so's character. We also know so-and-so's personality. Hey, as long as it's not a character issue, don't you worry about it. If it's a personality issue, if it's a character issue, yeah, we'll deal with it. But if it's a personality issue, you better get accustomed to dealing with different personalities in the office, because these are people that love us. These are people that go to battle for us every day. They serve the calling that's on our life. And these people, if they're going to go to battle for us, they're going to battle for you. So you better figure out how to get it right with them. We always put it back on them. Figure out how to deal with the different temperaments and the personalities, because loyalty and relationship is going to lead how we will ultimately work with each other.
No.
Well, I'm just thinking, that's the better business decision, because there's going to be a day where the parents aren't in the office that often. A couple of years ago, you and mom were 5 days a week in the office, and then you kind of let everybody know, we're going to get a lot of our work done from this area, this area. If I, as your son, was walking into an environment where people felt like they could not correct me because only you could, how would I ever know if I was actually doing something wrong?
Yeah.
And people may think, oh, there's a confidence in that, but there's actually no confidence when you are thinking, if I'm doing something wrong, no one will tell me. I won't know.
Yeah.
There's a confidence that comes about, if no one's correcting me, it's because I'm doing something right.
Yeah.
But you've created an environment where if I walk in and I'm wearing something I shouldn't, I'm speaking in a way that I shouldn't, somebody will speak to that. So there's this confidence that comes on your kids on the days where you're not in the office all that much, where they walk in and go, you know what? If I'm not being corrected, it's actually because I'm doing something right.
Mhm.
So you set your child up to fail if you can't allow the pillars of your organization to speak into your kids.
Mhm.
And outside of the Alessis, there aren't many people who want to see this thing succeed more than the senior staff. We've poured a lot of seed into this to not see it continue.
Right.
I want to see this thing
Yeah.
work.
Right.
Yeah. No, John, that's a good point. I think you deserve that. I think anybody who is sowed into something, it's like the people that when we left Grace Church, my parents' church, all those years back, and we came back into picture 15 years later, I couldn't just go in and change everything. I couldn't change the look of the building. I couldn't change, the too much that was taking place. Some people, they just on that alone, somebody told me, you just need to shut the church doors for 6 months and let all the people that were there just find another church.
Wow.
And then you come in with your spirit. That's how you're going to create culture. I'm like, are you kidding me? I can't rob the people that were faithful all those years. They should appreciate the journey
Yeah.
of the new and the growth and everything else. And it's the same thing what you're saying. You guys, as much as we, deserve the opportunity to watch this thing succeed because it's what you've given pretty much your whole career, your whole
Yeah.
adult
My
life.
adult life.
Adult life.
And Armando's been with us from day one, other than a couple of jobs here and there that he picked up. But then full time, even when he was working full time outside, he was still serving as one of our pastors or youth leaders or worship leaders. You and Jackie, Jackie's father
Is a pastor in town.
is a pastor in town.
Yep.
You guys walked away from that and you came over and came to work for us, which I felt was an incredible honor, that y'all would do that. But you
Pastor,
deserve it.
I wanted to rewind to that whole correction, because if there's a crisis right now, I would say is a correction crisis. And
Explain that.
okay, so to set everybody free, nobody really likes it, but the Bible says we're supposed to love it.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So we have always opened our lives up. You have too, and I know you have too, Pastor. Your whole life was open to correction. And what's not happening, because there's so many people watching this, what's not happening right now is people going to bat for the teacher, for the police officer,
Yeah.
for the authority, for the pastor, there are some out there situations, but for the most part, those people want the best for their kids. But now it's this defensive-ness, which anybody can tend to do that. Our flesh wants to do that, defend. I do that a lot. Okay? But the truth is 24 hours, 48 hours, a few hours,
Yeah.
that comes down.
Yep.
And then it's like, wait, that person loves me. That person wants the best for me. Why are they telling me that? Let me love correction, like the Bible says. And that is the spirit that I think has brought so much success to Metro Life Church.
Yeah.
Probably your whole congregation or most of it is okay with sharpening and correction. Definitely those that are close to you, we know what correction is. We've all been through it and we've all stuck around to get some more. So I think that's the crisis in the world right now, not to make this a really big subject or anything, but embrace correction. If we can all just embrace correction, not necessarily like it, but we can love it because it's good for us, then things would be so much better. And that's how we're going to get generational, and that's how we're going to get legacy, because everyone keeps that spirit
Mhm.
and nobody gets offended, nobody gets rebellious. It's just, okay, correct me, help me.
Yeah. Do you remember that time though, when Chris was younger, and he referred to it earlier, where it was a wobble. He was a young man. It was what we called, really at that point, it was age appropriate behavior, something he got involved in, and I wanted to make sure he knew that this was unacceptable. There was just certain things in our line of work we can't do. Bottom line, you can maybe get by with it in other lines of work, but for us that have to lead in this way, we just couldn't. So tell us about it, John. You remember that day?
You pull us all into an office, and you have Pastor Chris now, but he was just Chris back
20,
then.
21, something like that.
No, was this I thought it was the younger one, the 13, 14.
Yes.
Oh, we're talking about that one.
Oh, we're
That
going
one.
back to
Oh, wait a minute.
So there were two.
Oh,
I
my
made
gosh.
2 mistakes.
at 13 in Sunset Place. There used to be a restaurant. It was Dan Marino's restaurant. So for his 13th birthday, in honor of number 13, you bring all the big guns around a dinner
That was
table,
cool.
and you had us all talk to him about what it meant to move forward as a man, as a young man. And
Stuff I didn't have to apply until the last 2 months.
Oh, that was not fun.
there goes our rating,
Yeah.
Alan. It's PG-13 now.
No,
But what
I
about when
think
what about,
we're referring to the same one.
Let's-
When I was 19, 20, 21,
yeah.
I remember that day clearly.
Oh my gosh.
Because that was, they talk about in the Bible all the time, like they sat down and they built an altar to what God did there. That's an altar moment for me.
Yeah.
Every
That's the
time
one in
I,
the office, right?
That-
yes.
yeah,
Every
that's the
time
one
I
I'm
walk
referring
by,
to. Okay,
I
in the
remember that
office.
moment.
In the office. Go for
Sorry.
it.
So
And feel free to give input on
Yeah,
my
I will.
because you guys looked as uncomfortable as Chris did that day.
As did you, by the way.
Oh gosh.
well, we're in a room, and usually when we get called into a room, it's because we did something. So there's that stress level on us. We're like,
Yeah.
oh man, what do we do now?
What did you do, John?
Chris has to watch it now. My gosh.
So you very wisely had Chris explain to us his sin, his shortcoming, and then he had to hear it from all of us on why that was unacceptable. And that's what we go back to. You
Yeah.
gave us that opportunity, and it didn't take anything away in our minds of who he was. It propped him up even higher, because if he can be man enough to state his sin before other men, which is biblical, then this is a young man we can trust moving forward.
Yeah. And I'm trying to stay away from the sin word just to not make you feel
Well, no.
uncomfortable.
I was 100% a virgin when I got married. I feel great.
No, I can. So when you jacked it all up,
Well, okay, but I think about this though. If only my dad was allowed to say those things to me that day, then that makes all of that truth a him truth, which means if I'm uncomfortable with the truth, then I just got to get away from him.
yeah.
But when he didn't say it, and all of you said it, but man, it sounded a lot like him. That now said, okay, this isn't a dad issue. This is a life issue. This is a man issue. And I really hope people see that you actually remove all of the weight of your words if you're the only one that can say them. They have weight when everyone else shares them. So
And
that
now,
was
2 or 3.
that was a mountaintop moment for me where I
Yeah.
realized, okay, I don't live my, we talk about back rooms. I don't live my life in back rooms.
No way.
I live it in front of people. And so that was the little squabble. It never grew any worse than that.
Yeah.
And it was 100% because of that day.
But you just said it was a mountaintop moment, and let's go back. You were in the pit of the pit in that room. The interesting thing is the amount of lessons that were in that, and I can't name them all, but I can name a few. Exposure, God always sees. Think about the lessons in that room. Your peers and your brothers are there for adversity. You were
All good.
It was adversity, but it was all good.
Yep.
You being humble, you were very humble. Here's what I did. Here's what I didn't want to do. Blah blah blah, and then the way you just said this, the way we looked at you was not changed. It was age appropriate. It was things that any guy would go through, anybody would go through. And we are able to see you when you're probably looking at us going, what are these guys thinking? We're just saying, wow, you just opened up his life
Yep.
to us for correction, which by the way, now transfers through generation. Because when my boys, I have 4 boys, when my boys have an issue, I mean, there may not be office moments, but either he's going to know, or you're going to know, or he's going to know. John corrects my boys all the time.
It's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. So I'm waiting for Isaiah to just get a little older. But think about how that now continues, where Pastor Chris now
Yeah.
is pastoring my boys
Yes, sir.
and has those conversations that I never have. I have them as dad,
Mm-hmm.
but now they're hearing it from pastor, and then they're hearing it sometimes from pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my gosh, that is like, talk about a community to help you raise your kids. The family business
Yep.
brings in all kinds of support.
Yeah.
It's an entire church that's helping you raise your family or stay connected or stay married.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it just goes in that
And I
direction.
think, guys, if we can try to really show the importance of something here, pinpoint it, it really does show the need for exclusivity. I'm sorry, inclusion, not exclusion. Raising our kids, even though we are the pastors, the boss, raising them in the environment of you guys and your wives, having y'all come alongside of us was very helpful, so that they would be the better version of themselves. We didn't try to cover anything. We've never tried to cover stuff. I feel bad for the parent that feels like they got to cover when their kid does things that kids are going to do. It's just what it is. Now, we're not talking about major immorality here. We're not talking about a major breakdown. We're talking about stuff that's pretty age appropriate, but you got to teach them a lesson early on. And if you hide it, you teach them a lesson to hide the stuff. But we've always said when the light's put on something, hey, when the light comes on, the cockroaches run, right?
Yeah, they do.
We know, put the light on it, it keeps the ugly, dirty, nasty, sickening stuff out.
Yep.
So we were able to use that. But over the years then, what that lesson would teach for all of us was, if you needed to speak into his life, speak into his life. And if he needed to go,
If I needed someone,
yep,
I knew who to go
outside
to.
of dad, outside of mom.
Well, sometimes in the family business, guess what you have to process? Mom and dad.
Yep.
Yep.
And you need help
You do.
processing mom and dad. And to think that there's safety,
Oh,
that they
gosh.
could handle. That I know that if the worst of me, even though that was the worst it got that day, they can handle that. Well, they can handle this. And that all I can keep thinking throughout this podcast is the only constants in my life, are Metro Life Church and the senior staff.
Chris, you just said
That's powerful.
something
Only once.
that's extremely powerful. And talk about what could happen in other businesses or ministries when the children of the boss
Mm-hmm.
don't have somebody they can count on and trust that we're going to have your back,
Yeah.
but we're going to say it way different than you're going to say it. Him with his personality, me with mine, or whoever else, the ladies with your sisters. But there were times that he had to process Pastor Steve and Dad.
Yeah.
And everybody has to do that, because your parents are your parents, but now he's your boss, and now he's and talk about being able to stay. Like how important was that, to be able to just stick around with your calling in those crisis moments where we just had to sit down with my youngest, and in that model, which you guys kind of know a little bit, but in that model, I brought Addison, the 2 older brothers, and Aiden. Alexis was not there. The things that they said after I was addressing him about some things,
Mm-hmm.
the things that they said floored me.
Yep.
Like my heart was melting with pride. The way they were saying how important dad is, he's not your friend right now, he's your dad. All these things that I've said to him or you've said to them, right? Now they're saying it to their younger brother. And again, not major issues, just
Sure.
age-appropriate
Age-appropriate
stuff.
stuff.
Because we don't want to, I'm not throwing anybody out there with that, neither are we.
Right.
Welcome to my life, Eric.
Gosh. It's a beautiful cycle.
Yeah.
You know, I remember a time, Pastor, and this goes back to you allowing us to speak into them. It works to their benefit as well. I remember a time Chris did something, and Pastor, you just set him straight. You laid into him, and it was something he wasn't even responsible for, but you wanted him to fix it. And it was like, and he looked at me, and he's like, he was just floored. Like, what? Why me? What's going on? And I said, Chris, Pastor Steve is looking at you because he trusts you. And he didn't understand that. He thought he was just getting it because he was his son. And it was like, no, Pastor trusts you, so that's why he's treating you this way. And it changed the way he saw you because I understood that about you.
In an instant.
Yeah.
I remember that conversation. It was on the front row. So I'm the campus pastor, but I got nothing to do with the lights in the building. Nothing. And there was something that you didn't like about the lights. And so you came to me and you were like, and I would have thought that I took 80% of the church people and told them they're all stupid. You were so angry about it, and it was all in me. And I just happened to say it jokingly to John, kind of like tongue in cheek, but he could tell that it wasn't.
Wait, you complained about me to John?
No. He could tell.
He processed with me.
No, he could tell that it wasn't all tongue in cheek, that there was a little bit of hurt there, that I was like, okay, yeah, that was funny. Please tell me that was funny, right? And he was able to say, well, I remember having to shift it in my mind that, wait, yeah, maybe that doesn't come under my realm of responsibility, but he's coming to me because he trusts me to get it right. And I remember saying, oh my gosh, John, he did do that with you for all of these years. And man, you got to be able to pass that baton on. So I get it. And that moment, it wasn't because what he said was so profound. It was because the relationship is so profound.
Yeah.
Because of all of the smaller moments where he's spoken into me. And, it was insane because just recently, like, John and Jackie are the people who, if someone needs them, they are there.
Oh my gosh.
They rarely ever have needs.
Yep.
And I'll tell you right now, my entire life, if I needed something, I knew John and Jackie were there. And to the same degree, Pastor Armando and Anna, but just like a little bit, that was John and Jackie. Well, there was a day where they were just, they needed lunch. And I just remember telling Rochelle, let's go be John and Jackie for John and Jackie. Let's go do it. And that's not the way that I think.
No.
And it was just amazing because it was like, talk about legacy, but at a different level.
Yeah.
Just continued. And I just want to go back to the only constants in my life. I've had so many friends, and for different reasons, they've come and they've gone. The only constants in my life have been my parents and your business.
Yeah.
Your friends, your staff members, the business that you've started. That is the only thing that's lasted. So when I wake up and I look at the pillars, the foundation of my life, I'm married now, my house has changed, all these things are changing. But what remains the same are these people.
Yeah.
And it gives me solid ground to build my life on.
I'll tell you, when I was young, I came back from college. I wasn't working for my dad right away. And I had to work construction, which was a crazy deal because I had an education and for ministry. And then my dad thinks, well, you got to be like Jesus now, go swing a hammer. And I hated it. But I did it for like 2 years. And then when I started working, I remember complaining about all the employees to my dad because I was there full time every day and Dad was not. He was not a office guy at all. So I would see different things and I'd go to my dad, Dad, this guy, this, that, this guy, that. And it was just so unwise of me as a young man because I put pressure on my dad to do things and he was having to take my word for it. It was a flawed understanding because I was only in my 20s at that time, coming out of school thinking I knew everything and not recognizing the wisdom and their experience of these guys that were in the office and the weight each of them were carrying. So I made it about the stupid things, that they were late to meetings or they were late getting in the office or they were going out to lunch too much. And I would come home and complain. And my dad was put under such ridiculous pressure because of me. And I remember it was, even for our dynamics here in the office, that it's natural for a younger generational next gen family member in the business, family business and ministry, to come up and want to pinpoint things about different members of the team because they're young, just like I was. It's just kind of natural. They want to bring up stuff about this one or that one. And every time, not that it happened all the time, but every time that would happen, we'd always go back and say, hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute. For one thing, you're too young to make a judgment call. Two, you got to know the gifting and the talents of each and every one of these staff members. And three, you got to know that they are committed to us more than anything, or else they wouldn't be here. I say that because just as much as the leader in the business wants to protect his family, if the family's wrong, so they'll cover up things, they have to be even more protective of the staff
That's good.
that has demonstrated to the family over the years loyalty, commitment, and integrity.
Mhm.
Because the younger minds of the next generation don't see the big picture. And the dad that is, or the mom that's running this, enterprise, they're taking such a higher level of perspective. They have to fly over all of this so they know who brings what to the table, who brings that to the table, who's strong here, who's strong there. And it's a great understanding for the next generation to know that, wait a minute, everyone on that team that's with us, if they're for us, they have a role to play. So honor that. Don't get picky over what this one's not doing, that one's not doing, or this one is doing, or the way that one is saying it, or the way that one is handling a situation. Know the uniqueness and the balance that each of the team brings to the table. And that's kind of what we're saying here today.
Yeah.
The only reason he's able to have, and Steph and Lauren and Gabby and Marcus, your own kids, Armando, making a way, your kids' future making a way, the only way they're going to be able to have the opportunity to really succeed is if we all show them how important honor is for everybody on the team.
Yeah.
And we've said something, and I'll bring this thing for a closing here. We throw this out. It's my favorite. To whom much is given, much is required. We lead by example,
not by
not by parking space. But we always said about our kids, especially when they were younger, our kids are asked to do something no one else's kids are asked to do. For one, right now we see it with John. John and Jackie are here full time. Their kids are here full time. They're here earlier because their workday starts earlier, especially when he was dropping them off at school down the street. They would be in the office earlier than anybody else would be in the office. Their kids are asked to stay later than other kids are asked. And ours went through the same thing back in the days, right, Mondo?
Mhm.
But we said this, all right, because they're asked to do more, just because they're here and in our offices and so on, because they're asked to do more, they deserve a little more liberty than the average kid. So as much as we didn't want them in the office, if they were in our offices, because when they're kids, it's not the best place for them to be because they're disrupting the flow of things, like kids will do, age appropriate. We still had a little more grace for that.
Mhm.
And we tried to go, even bring kids with us if we go on certain events, try to bring the kids if we could. We always wanted to make way for our kids to be a part of it because we know that the family unit, the staff isn't going to be as happy if the family's not happy. I need my kids alongside of me to be happy. Mary and I need to make sure they're respectful. And if we need that, so do you guys. So does every staff member. That's one of the reasons why when we have a position that's open for something, if our kids are there to help fill that spot, we're going to hire them. We're going to put them in that place of leadership. They deserve that opportunity. And may the Lord just bless their lives because of it, and their destiny would play out. So we do try to make way for our kids, and we all chip in along the way to make sure our kids are on the straight and narrow and doing what they need to do. But you can't raise a healthy family business without others alongside of us.
And in the Bible, if you were a Levite, you were a priest.
Yep.
So if you're an Alessi, guess what?
Yeah.
It's okay that you're going to get preferential treatment if you're Roman or a Gomez, and that's okay because they're pouring into this ministry.
Yeah.
People don't see it.
Please make sure you say they get a Gomez and Romans get preferential treatment as well, or else people will just say, "Oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Alessi."
If you-
That's what he's saying.
Yeah, if your last name's Roman,
Good.
if your last name's Gomez,
Good. Or
you-
Paul,
or Paul,
or Martinez.
It's not favoritism, it's preferential. I think it's a good word. Pastor, we've all been in the team. When I was on the team where my dad coached, I got it harder than the other people, but I also got different I love yous than everybody else.
Mhm.
So I think that's the preferential treatment. Like you get it harder, but you also get a different intimacy with your parents or the boss.
most
But yeah.
families don't want to trade with us. They don't realize what it takes to be us, and for that there is a benefit, and
Yes.
there's nothing wrong with that.
I remember a couple of years ago, Addison, Armando's second son, who's now on staff and is really doing a great job. By the way, he now, when we share wins on a Monday morning, 2 out of every 3 is his win is Jonathan correcting him, and he's thankful that Jonathan corrected him. So just to tie all this up, literally, it's proven even outside of this room. But I remember when he wasn't on staff, he was younger. You needed him to run an errand. So we're all having this staff meeting, and I watch him as he walks into the front door, and he puts his head down to like not distract from the meeting. He walks into the offices, he does his thing, and as he's coming back, I'm thinking, if I was 18, if my dad was leading a staff meeting and I walked in, the whole staff would stop and acknowledge me. They not to get in the flow, not to distract, but they would never make me feel like I was getting in the way of business. And so when he came back out, I said, "Hey, Addison, one quick moment. Good to see you." And I just wanted to make sure that we keep that the team's kids who are part of the
Yeah.
team too, who are going to be the first ones to clean your campus when they get there. If you need help, they're the first ones there.
Yep.
We're always going to acknowledge them and honor them. And we will never set a culture that, well, you're getting in the way of what we're doing. It's
Yeah.
like, no.
That's good.
And I just remember that day. And look at now, I mean, he's on staff and he's really doing a good job.
They are. And we're blessed to have that. So, guys, I want to thank you both and all of our team. That's really our family and friends that make up our staff here at our church. And Chris, I want to thank you. You're doing good. Being able to let them speak into your life and not get small and sensitive. And we got something good here. So now we just got to keep it going.
Keep it going.
So we hope we were encouraging to you today at the family business with the Alessis and the Romans and the Gomezes. And we hope you had a great time. We sure did. Take care.